Okay, it worked. We're
Yay.
live.
Yay. Well, welcome to this week's episode of Living in the Texas Hill Country. We have Romeo Ozuna joining us today. He is an agriculture and natural resources agent with Prairie View Cooperative Extension Program, which is just kind of another branch of AgriLife Extension. So they kind of do the same thing, but uh, focus a little bit on different topics. Is that right?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And again, thank you, Carly, and thank you, Dr. Tidwell, for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. It's really good and impactful, this podcast that you're doing, because it's very important to showcase, what agriculture and what we all do to provide educational programs for our clientele, our community, and farmers and ranchers along. Like Carly said, we work hand in hand, same A&M system, two different sister agencies, but we collaborate very well with one another to kind of tailor to the audiences that we serve uh, in both aspects of the agencies. So yes, that is correct.
And
Very
I
well.
think before we got started, I think you said that you're down in Starr County.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I am down here in Starr County. I'm the Ag and Natural Resource Agent, like Carly said, for Prairie View A&M University, servicing Starr County and Hidalgo County. So I'm a little bit down south. I'm about 1.7 miles from the border.
Nice.
So that's literally where my office is at. But yes, I service these farmers and ranchers down here.
So today, Carla, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to talk about some basics of owning livestock.
Yeah, I thought that it might be a good topic to kind of throw in now that we've been doing this for a little while. I get some questions in the office, and I think other agents do too, of, I bought this property, I've got, you know, 10, 20, 30 acres. I want to put some livestock out there to either start doing something. Maybe they want to just have some meat at home. Maybe they want to have a little cow-calf operation on a smaller scale. Or maybe they just want livestock for their tax exemption purposes, and all those are, great ideas and everything. And to me, Romeo is my go-to cattle guy. So I know you'll probably focus a little bit on cattle, but same thing can apply for sheep, goat, llamas, alpacas, whatever. So yeah, just some general info about what all you need to get started. Say you want to go buy some animals, and you're thinking, oh shoot, I got to build a fence first. So what else is there?
Yeah, well, basically, when you're starting a cattle operation or you want to have some type of livestock on your property, whether you're brand new or you've been around cattle your whole life, it doesn't really matter. In order to be successful, that truly really comes down to having the right foundation in place. Um, some topics or some advice that I would give was the first thing that you nearly read to do, what you would really need to do is, does your land match your goals? What is it that you're trying to do? Are you going to be a cow-calf pair operator, to kind of raise some calves to make some income? You can use that to pay your taxes. Are you, like Carly mentioned, are you going to just kind of raise some calves and grass feed them out, butcher them and have some of your own meat? Those different things like that. Make sure that your land matches some of your goals. And that doesn't mean just mean acreage. It means understanding your grazing capability as well, your soil, your water sources, and how much forage can your land actually produce. Beginners often ask, sometimes, especially us as county extension agents, how many cows can I run, sir? Or Miss Howell or Mr. Ozuna, how many cows can I run? Hey, that's a good question, but how much grass or how much grass can my land grow? That's something that really is very pivotal and very important. We don't, myself, I don't consider myself a cattle raiser. I consider myself a grass raiser, because if I need to raise grass in order to have cattle, so that's how I kind of look at that option. Some of the advanced producers treat grass like a crop, and that mindset, leads to healthier pastures, and as well as healthier cattle. Um,
And I think a great point that you made is and it's one of those things where, like, I know obviously down where you are, where I'm at, up in Uvalde and even up into the hill country is, brush is obviously a major issue. So if you purchase a property and it's covered in brush, livestock may not be your best first option. At some point, you can probably transition over to livestock once you've done a little bit of work on your property, but you may have to start one point in order to get to another point.
Correct. And in that aspect, if you look at it, they do have USDA programs that could help beginner farmers and ranchers, or even seasoned farmers and ranchers get to that point. If you have 10, 20 acres, 30 acres, 40 acres, whatever it is, you can go to the USDA, you can go to your farm service agency, your local farm service agency, put get your track number, get all that done, then head over to the NRCS and you can meet with a planner. They can put an application for you. They'll go out there with you, kind of tell them what you want. You want to do some brush work, you want to do water well, you want to do cross fencing, stuff like that. If your property is not up to par to what you need to have the cattle, like you mentioned, down here it's different. We don't have a lot of brush. We do have brush, but a lot of the ranches kind of have some improvements.
Mm-hmm.
In the hill country is totally different than down here. The soils are different.
Yeah.
The terrain is different. You have a lot more hills in that area. We don't have that down here. So every part of Texas is different, especially when you're dealing with having to want to raise livestock or be in the cattle business. So the way you look at it, you kind of goes back to the number one thing. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Some of the other things that I kind of throw out there, you need to have the right infrastructure, if you're going to be doing something like this. At the bare minimum, a good fence, a reliable water source, and a safe way to handle cattle. Pens, maybe a squeeze chute. Beginners sometimes they kind of overstep this process, but that nothing. It doesn't.
It's easy
Doesn't
to get
hurt.
them on. It's the getting them off that
Right.
becomes the issue. Because
Correct.
you leave them on, you open the gate, and you're like, be free. But now you're trying to shove them in a small box, and they don't generally want to go into the small dark box. Generally
Correct.
speaking.
And down here, we use cattle cubes. There's a different brands, right? But cattle cubes is always good to kind of just bring them in. That kind of makes them a little bit more docile. You don't want to be chased around either, but you want them to be able to come into your pen. You want to be able to, close the gate if you need to move them or transport them, whatever. You have a good little system, that'll help you. So infrastructure is very important. Again, the number one thing is water. Down here where we're at, we have water wells. Most of the ranches out here have water wells, so we have to dig to find our water. Most of the water down here does have sulfur. We have a lot of TDS down here, so especially personally in my place, my water is at 3,200 parts per million of salinity. So it's just a little high, but it's still feasible and drinkable for cattle and wildlife. But just it's just part of the deal. I know producers that drill water wells, they get 6,000 parts per million. That thing isn't drinkable, and it's not even drinkable for wildlife or cattle. So they're stuck in a pickle where what do I do? So there's that aspect of it as well.
So one thing you had touched on was, infrastructure, and you'd said a good fence. So how would you define a good fence for somebody they've seen fences, driving down the highway, they're everywhere, but what is a good fence in your opinion?
I mean,
If you can put a definition. I realize that's probably a really tough question.
well, a good fence is having a 5-strand barbed wire and or the 5-foot panel, with your T-posts, you know, with your wooden posts, even pipe, you know, 2 3/8. You know, you can put your 2 3/8 pipe, you put your 5 T-posts, another pipe, T-post, pipe, you know, have a strong structure. You can use barbed wire, you know, or like I said, the King Ranch panel. You know, I've seen a lot of that stuff. Having it clean, you know, make sure that you spray it, make sure that you use, you know, remedy or whatever herbicides that you want to use to maintain that fence line. Because if you start getting trees growing up in there, shrubs, mesquites, you know, all of that causes breakages, and then you can have cattle go into different properties, go into the highway, you know, and then you're going to be playing John Wayne, you know, trying to catch cattle in other people's property.
And then
Isn't
you
that
have to
what
learn how to rope.
I was gonna say, isn't that what everyone wants to be when they grow up? Is like John Wayne, or I guess like we were talking about before we hopped on here. I guess everyone wants to be like Rip from Yellowstone, or what's Kevin Costner's character's name on Yellowstone? I don't even
John Dutton.
John.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. There you go. Everyone wants to be them nowadays. So
Yeah, no, it's
Whatever.
you can't. You know, it's fun to try, but
yeah.
but
But it's
you
not
know,
as fun when you have to rope your own animals because those things
And
cost
it's
money
and it's between a high fence and a highway, and you're like, I have to nail it, this go, or yeah, we're gonna have some issues.
yeah, you know, and this conversation we're having for you all is not to deter you all
No.
from doing this. You know, we're throwing real life situations out there, realistic things that do happen. You know, I'm a 7th generation rancher. You know, I've been around cattle since I was in diapers, since I was potty trained. I was dehorning, I was castrating, I was branding, I was earmarking, you know, roping in the corral, you know. So I've seen it all, you know, and it's fun, it's rewarding. It's when you go out there and you see your cattle, or you go in there, you see your calves and say, you know what, hey, I'm doing this. These are mine. I'm raising these good animals. But, you know, it does take work, you know, and like you mentioned, you know, being like John Wayne, it's not fun. You know, I'll give you all an instance. Last year, we had some cattle get loose on the highway, all of them on a US highway,
oh no.
because the neighbor decided that he wanted to fix the fence and said that we didn't have cattle on that side, and there had been cattle there for 3 months. So he tore down 300 feet of fence. The cattle went into his property. His property was not fenced along the highway. So they went in there, they caused an accident, and I lost 2 calves, two registered calves that were killed in the car, and they charged us $400 a head to
Ooh.
catch each one of those animals. Cowboys came out, caught them all at $400 a head at 17 head. So that's why it's important that we were talking about to ensure that you have good fencing, you know, because it cost us almost $5,000, $6,000 personally to retrieve our cattle when it wasn't even our fault.
And I think that's another great point of also knowing if you can, it's hard, you know, everyone's different, but if you can, having good communication with your neighbors, a simple phone call to y'all from your neighbor being like, hey, I want to replace some fence, I want to whatever, do y'all have cattle in said pasture? And you've been like, yeah, I do. Like, you know, either I can pull them or you just wait, whatever. A simple phone call would have saved you a lot of headache and probably some choice words with your neighbor.
Correct. You know, and you know, like you mentioned, you know, communication is key to everything. And that goes in cattle business, that goes in the deer business, that goes in every work situation, you know, even husband and wife situation, you know. Communication is key, because if you can talk about things, things can get resolved. You know, it's just a matter of communication with one another, having good neighbors, letting them know who you are. Look, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna have some cattle here, you know, blah, blah, blah. Just want to let you know, if you see anything, please give me a call. Here's my number.
Yep.
You know,
'Cause-
and go ahead.
I was gonna say with livestock, like it's not a matter of when something happens, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it happens. Like you're gonna get livestock that get out. They're gonna get, if it's a sheep or a goat in a panel, they're gonna get their head stuck in a panel because the grass is always greener on the other side. So yeah, that's just my point, is good communication, just another set of eyes to help you with your livestock makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and that's why we focus and we talk about the infrastructure in order to have, you know, a good fence line. So that's very important as well. You know, the cattle handling, the good corrals, you know, some good set of pens. That's always going to be very important as well, in to ensure safety. It saves you time, it saves you money, and it saves you stress. You know, if you have a good set of pens, you got a good handling system, you're not going to be chasing animals all over the place. You're going to be able to work them well. You know, do your vaccination protocols. You can work them, treat them if they get sick or, you know, whatever, right? So that's always important as well. You know, and it's very rewarding now for us, now that we've seen an actual price jump in our cattle. You know, I remember 15 years ago, and I was selling calves for 88 cents to $1 to a pound. You know, and then all of a sudden right now we're selling cattle for, you know, 4 to 5 weight steer for $3.70 a pound to $4.20 a pound, depending on the quality and depending on the breed that you're working with, you know. So, you know, you're getting $800, now you're getting 2,000. You know, that's a heck of a lot of difference. You know, so when we're talking about this issue, you know, people are wanting to start to get into the cattle business. Say, okay, well, you know what, this could be beneficial for us. You know, right now cattle are not cheap. You know, you can buy some good mama bred cows, you know, depending on the breed. I get text messages all the time from people from Oklahoma and up in East Texas and all over the country that are trying to sell me cattle. You know, you can find the ultra black baldies or some good Brangus bred females, and they're $3,800, you know, but they bred.
Yeah.
And then they have their calf, God willing, they're bred to a low birth weight bull, but in 5 months, you know, you sell that calf for $1,700-1,800 where your investment is already half paid off.
Yeah.
So you can do really well, you know, if you know what you're doing. That's why it's very important to ask questions, you know, reach out to your county extension agents in your county. Every county has one. You know, and leading back into that, you know, when you have cattle, you want to also implement a good herd health and nutrition plan. You know, that's very important as well. You know, along with the forage, you know, having a vaccination program, knowing when to deworm, understanding what cattle need nutritionally at different stages. Success, you know, comes from consistency, you know, consistent mineral, consistent forage quality, consistent healthcare, you know, and a good, strong relationship with your veterinarian, you know, is a big part of this. You know, like I said, me personally, and I use a lot of me because, you know, I manage quite a bit of land, you know, and I manage quite a bit of cattle. So having a good mineral program, ensure that you have good forage, that's number one as well. You know, down here in this area in the south, we don't get as much rain as you all may get up there. You know, so right now we're dry. You know, we are very dry. We're in a drought. You know, it hasn't rained in a couple months. So
Yeah.
you go outside and you kick that buffalo grass and that thing breaks. So the protein content in that forage is 4%, 5%, if that. So I have to kind of incorporate, what am I going to do to help these animals kind of maintain their body condition? Down here, I run one animal unit per 25 to 30 acres
Oh, wow.
because of how the land is here and the rainfall. Up north, you know, it could be a little bit different. You know, when I went to Illinois last week, they were running one head per 2 acres, you know, because the terrain is different, the land is different, the forage is different. So depending on where you're at, that's how you have to kind of look at that. So implementing a good herd health protocol, nutritional plan, you know, that's getting a relationship with your veterinarian if you need something. You know, now you cannot just go buy medications over the counter anymore. You know, you used to be able to get your penicillin, you probably can still get some penicillin and stuff, but once all those things are over, you're gonna have to consult with your vet. You know, if
Yeah.
you need to get any, you know, for me, for example, if I need to set up cattle for synchronization protocols or for AI or whatever, right? You know, I have to get one, I have to buy my multi-min, I have to order from a vet. I need to order the Ludulase, I need to order the Cistrellin, I need to order the cedars, you know, all that stuff that has to deal with treatment, you know, done through a vet. So it's always good to have that client veterinary relationship. You know, that's, you get a dystocia deal where your cow can't have a calf or she's having trouble calving. Well, what are you gonna do? And who do you call? You know, you're gonna have to get out there and you're gonna have to get your hands dirty. You're gonna have to pull that calf. You know, so if you have a good client relationship with your vet, you know, hey doc, I need you to come help me pull this calf, you know, whatever. Hey, boom, boom, boom. You know, you're out there, you can save that. You know, 5 days ago, I had to put one of my cows down because she had dystocia, she couldn't calve. You know, and fortunately it is what it is. I didn't catch her on time, lost the calf, had to pull the calf dead out. And then, you know, she was too weak to did everything I could to save her, and I couldn't.
And for somebody that does not know what dystocia is, me meaning like me, what is dystocia?
That's when your first time mama cows or even other females, you know, once you get to your mature cows can't calve, or they were bred by a bull that had a big birth weight. You know, we see that a lot in your first time heifers, because their pelvic area is not as developed as others. You know, so if you put a bull on them, you need to ensure that it's a low birth weight bull. It's a Cavanese bull, you know, and these are things that you learn as you go. But if you have questions, that's why it's really good to reach out to your extension agents. We have the resources to give you that information. You know, we have charts. If you're the beef master, you're in the Angus, you're in the Charolais, you're in the Brahmin, you know, whatever breed that you're looking at to grow or raise, they each have an association and they have EPDs, which are expected progeny differences that you can look at. You can look at their numbers and say, okay, well, you know what? I don't want to have to deal with this. I need to look for a bull that's going to breed my cows so that they can have a baby easy. In layman terms, pretty much have a baby easy. That's pretty much what dystocia is, you know. You want to get rid of that, it's look for a bull that's going to have your first time heifers have a good Cabanese so that they don't have problems. You know,
And
because
I was just gonna say, it's kind of funny how in people we're always very obsessed. We're like, oh yes, 9-pound baby, 10-pound baby, like, but with livestock and even wildlife, you want a low birth weight because they are doing it by themselves out in pasture. So you generally don't want to have to be, you should check on them, definitely. If you know you're gonna have cows, livestock, calving or kidding or what have you, definitely check on the mamas, make sure they're not having issues. But yeah, they do it at the most inopportune moments, generally in the middle of the night or right after it's rained or miserable, terrible weather.
weather patterns have a lot to do with that, especially full moons, you know, right before a big rain,
Yep.
you know, stuff like that. So another suggestion, if you know you're going to raise some cattle and you know they're pregnant and you know that they're going to have a calf, you know, once their udder starts to develop milk, you know, once their vulva starts to swell up a little bit, you know, they're pretty much around calving, put them in a pen. You know, don't have, you know, depending and this all goes back to depending on your land size, you know, but put them in a pen, and that's probably easier than trying to go look for them in a 30-acre pasture or a 600-acre pasture where you can't find them, you know. So that's something that I've implemented where it's easier for beginner producers or beginner ranchers or even seasoned ranchers, you know, that don't want to be having to deal with that stuff. Or, you know, put them in a pen, you can at least go check on them. They're not going to go anywhere. Just have some bales of hay, you know, water, stuff like that. And if you have issues, well, you're right there. You're not having to deal with that
Because
out there.
that cow is going to find the absolute like thickest, most remote part of your property, and that's where they're going to have their
Yeah,
calf at.
you know, and
Or try to.
especially down here when you have a bunch of cactus, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, well, how do I get in there? And
Mhm.
also that as well brings in, you know, the equipment and tools,
Mm.
feeders, cattle feeders, trailer. You know, you don't have to buy everything at once, but you do need to know how you're going to feed, how you're going to transport, how you're going to manage the cattle through the seasons. You know, these are kind of the tools that we have, you know, in order to make it a little bit easier for us, more efficient.
So for like trailer size, because I know um a lot of times, especially people have like horses or smaller livestock, they generally like they kind of go with the rule of thumb of you should have a trailer that should be able to fit all your livestock in it. However, depending on how large your property is, obviously you cannot have a 18-wheeler to fit your all of your cattle into it. Not feasible, nor does anyone want a CDL. Is there like a recommendation in regards to when people go to purchase a trailer for, we'll say like a smaller operation, of what size is kind of recommended, or is it more of just it comes down to like a preference or comfort level thing?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to personal comfort preference. You know, I personally have a 16-foot trailer. I've used 24 footers, you know, depending on the cattle numbers that you run. You know, if you're going to be running, you know, 20 head of cattle, depending on your calving season, for example, you know, a 16-foot trailer should work fine. You know, you got 2 compartments, 4 foot, 4 foot. I'm sorry, my math is gone. I haven't had lunch yet, so I apologize for that. I
Eight
wasn't
feet,
very good
8
at
feet.
math. Just
I'm not
FYI.
either. It's okay. You're in good company.
8 and 8. You got 8 feet in the front, 8 feet in the back. You should be able to fit. You know, I've put comfortably, where you also want to make sure that you don't want to be putting too much pressure and putting calves all tied up in there because they can get hurt. You know, you don't want to have to go down. And then once you get to where you're going to get at, you know, they have a leg broken or something, or they just die because they're just being stepped on. You know, you want to avoid that. So, you know, you want to leave enough space where they're able to move around. But if you have a small scale operation, a 16-foot trailer should be good. Some people use the bumper pull. You know, I know my dad, you know, for example, he's up in age, you know, he's 73, so it's kind of hard for him to jump in the back of a truck and connect a gooseneck. And that's what he has us for. But, you know, right now I'm in the process of looking for a bumper pull for him so he can just connect to the
Real
back
simple.
of his bumper pull and he doesn't have to be jumping all over the place. So it just comes on a personal preference. Bigger operations kind of use 32 footers, got a 24 footer, 40 footers, you know, because they're going to haul, you know, 16, 18, 20 head of calves to the market at one given time or more, you know, so you're able to, a 24 footer where you have 3 compartments of 8 feet. You know, if a 40 footer, then you kind of, you know, that 5 compartments of 8 feet. So you're able to kind of manage what you need. But it, like you said, it comes down to personal preference and what your operation looks like. Kind of another little piece of advice as well, you know, when you're doing this, is record keeping. Record keeping as well. You know, that's one of the probably another big key to success. You know, sometimes when we get started, we kind of overlook this. You know, kind of want to keep track of what's going on, birthdays, you know, pasture rotation, expenses, breeding records, you know, all this data helps you make better decisions, you know, especially when things get a little tight, when margins get tight, you know. So let's just say you have 5 head, you know, okay, well, mama 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay, they all got bred today. Remember today's date? Remember
18th. It's the
18th.
18th. I had to look too. I was like, it's
You know,
18th.
they get bred today, November 18th. You know, well, you know that the gestation period is about 280 to 285 days, 283 days is what they call it. But it can be 2 weeks before, it can be 2 weeks after. They just don't always calve on that 283 days. Okay, so you know more or less, okay, well, 283 days from today, because let's just say you actually saw that bull breed the cow. Okay, we say, okay, well, you know what? We go 283 days from now, November, I got to be around, you know, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, around September area. I need to kind of watch them because they're all going to start to bag up. So then that's kind of where you say, okay, well, do I pin them up? So, all right. And then if they have a calf, well, then you mark it down. Cow mama 1 had a steer, which is a male. Mama 2 had a steer. Mama 3 had a heifer. So putting on those birth dates, putting down those records. Okay, well, you know what? Now that they've had a baby, I moved them to pasture number 2. To know when you were rotating. I do that. I have an Excel sheet and I have all my cattle written down, and it's okay. Well, they were rotated to, and I call it the fox blind. The fox blind area is one of my pastures. It's 100 acres. Well, I moved them August 17th. Well, now we're November 18th. It's been almost 3 months. Okay, now I'm going to move them to another pasture because they've been eating. Forage is kind of getting low a little bit. So write it down. Okay, I moved them here this day. So at least you have a record of how you're rotating your pastures, monitoring your grass growth. You don't want to get to this big because then if it rains, it's going to take forever to get back up. So you rule of thumb is, my rule of thumb is leave 6 to 8 inches of grass when you move. So that if it rains, you have that expansion and that soil able to grow, your grass back up, because it does take some time.
So, and that also goes back to, it also it keeps your roots healthy on your
Correct.
vegetation as well. Is if you graze it down low, the plants are going to put, and I think we talked about this. Oh gosh, this is like the second one I think we did. We talked about calculating stocking rates. But just as a refresher, yeah, once it gets real low, that plant's putting so much energy into growing all the green stuff on top that kind of stops growing their roots. A year or so, not gonna, probably kill the plant, but over time you keep doing that, you're gonna start to see a pretty massive reduction in your production in regards to all the green stuff out there on the landscape, because it's gonna start dying, especially like for y'all down there right now where y'all are in a drought. We are on the brink of being there on a drought. Yeah, it's really gonna come into play. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Is that kind of everything that and the thing is, I'm sure there are things that we could spend an entire day talking about.
Yeah.
All of the things, because there's so many things, so many scenarios. But where do you recommend people go for, obviously, county extension agents, NRCS for some information, but what about, I'll say, communities to hook up with, to join, whether it be professional organizations? And I think you had mentioned some. What are some of the ones that you recommend people join or hook up with to continue to get information? If they have questions, they can kind of get their little friend, their livestock friend group, and it's like, hey, I have a cow that's having issues, what do I do? Can I pull this calf? Do I need to call the vet? What's up?
Yeah, sure. What I normally do is I go to the local auction barn. You have a lot of producers that go there on sale day. They're selling their cattle. So there's a lot of individuals there that are very knowledgeable. They've been doing this for a long time. So if you want to find some information, I go every Friday to our local auction barn, and I have a little roundtable discussion with all the producers, all the old men. We sit there and we drink coffee and we talk about market trends. We talk about what's going on, how much did they bring in last time, different things of that nature, and say, well, you know what? I had this problem, but I called so-and-so and they went out and helped me. Oh, and if you, okay, well, who was that? You have their phone number? Well, yes, I do. So that's how you can kind of make those connections. That's where I would go. If I'm a beginner, to kind of ask, meet somebody and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about maybe purchasing some cattle. Do you know anybody in the area? Or what have you seen? What are the market? And that was going to focus on my last point is you need a marketing plan if you're going to be having some type of cattle. Because obviously you're going to have to sell your babies to make some income. That's the whole part of this. And before you ever buy your first cow, how do you plan to sell your calves? Are you going to sell them to the local market? Are you going to do private treaty? Are you going to be doing replacement heifers, direct to consumer beef type of deal? So there's different ways. You just gotta learn to plan it. And there's resources out there to help you do that. You know, you can contact one of us. We can kind of lead you to the right place. You know, so in my opinion, my suggestion, you know, if you have a local auction barn in your area, go by and sit down and visit with some of the older gentlemen that have been doing there for a long time. You know, those guys, you know, I've always been a man, me personally, I've always been in I've always played a big role in listening to what they have to say because they have a lot of advice. You know, old school is probably the best school. You know, nowadays things are not as they were. So you know, they're the ones to tell you the old wise tales. You know, hey, this is what I had happen to me, but this is what I did, or you know what, this is who I called, and they helped me. You know, so that's where you can kind of get that information.
Yeah.
And I want to plug in, Hill Country Cattle Women is a good organization too that I'm aware of that they are focused here in the Hill Country area, and obviously it says women. So I mean, in my opinion, because I am a woman, sometimes it might be a little bit harder for us to kind of make that community. So that's a really good group to get in contact with or become a member of, to you know, to have that community, people to lean on.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
real quick, I mean, I don't know how much time we have left.
hey, keep rolling.
But I was going to share my screen real quick just to kind of show the audience, you know, whenever y'all see this, what a pasture looks like that has, you know, a rotation operation that has grass, that has brush, that has wildlife on it, and how you can have a functional operation with cattle, you know, because up in the hill country, you do have a lot of wildlife as well. You have the deer, you have exotics, you know, roaming around. So I'm just gonna do this real quick, see if it'll let me. I'm not very tech savvy here.
It's okay. You will not be the first. It always works when in practice, but then when push comes to shove, it just, I'm telling you, Zoom does not like me. Hey,
Can y'all see that?
I was gonna
It's
say, yeah, now we can see it.
Okay, this here is my personal property. It's 600 acres, and I have it all mapped out here with the boundary lines. As you can see, you can see. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You see these strips here?
Hmm.
All of this is grass that I went ahead and improved my land through the USDA. So those of you that are listening, if you buy land and you want to have it improved, there's a program called the Equipped program. And the Equipped program will help you with brush management, will help you with root plow, will help you create forage. There's different grasses in different areas. You know, down here, we have buffalo grass. Up there could be coastal, could be Bermuda, you know, whatever. But here we have buffalo. So what I did was I did 150 feet by, I think this is about 1,500 feet, and 150 feet by 2,000, and kind of just did a whole checkerboard. If you think about it, it's like a checkerboard. So you have grass, grass, brush, brush, grass, brush, grass, brush, grass, brush. So here, if you follow my pointer, the deer can go from brush to brush to brush to brush to brush to brush.
And I think that's another really good point is you do want grass, but your livestock do also need cover.
cover.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for, at this point, not necessarily for adult livestock, for predators necessarily, more so livestock than sheep, goats, but they still need to get out of the heat. When it's, you know, a lovely, you know, South Texas summer, they still need to get out of the heat. So don't by all means remove all your brush. They need to have some shade, or if it does get really cold, they need to have some place to go.
Right. And then, like I said, you know, we talked about infrastructures. You know, I have a shed here that holds bales of hay. I have my house here, my little ranch house there. And then these are my corrals. You know, my uncle, this is my dad's brother. He shares next to us, so we share corrals. But, you know, a good handling system. You know, we got our water, we got our pens. We bring them in here. We can close the gates. This is our holding pen here, and we work them and we put them to the chute and out. You know, so this is a little good handling system. So that's how that one, you got water source here, you got a water source there. On this other pasture here, it's the same thing, you know, grass, brush, grass, brush, grass. Same thing over here. These is our little infrastructures down here. This is our other house that we have it down over here. You know, we have a shed for our tractors, for our equipment. And then we have our other holding pens here, our corrals. You know, we have our water, we have our loading chute. You know, everything is tailored to the size of the operation, but also where we do it efficiently and we do it, you know, safely. So nobody's getting hurt, you know. And if you, so this is kind of an example of pasture rotation where you have plenty of forage here. You got 100 acres right here. You got another 100 acres here, and you got another 100 acres here. So once my cattle are here, and I see, okay, well, you know what? I got about 6 to 8 inches, 9 inches of grass left. You know what? Let me move them over here. So I move them to these 100 acres. Let this one over here rest. Hopefully, within time, you'll get some rain, which we're praying for right now. But it gives these two other pastures that are resting to grow. They graze here. Hey, you move them over here. This one already got rained on, so it's still in reserve. You know, so that's how you kind of handle that deal there. So I just kind of wanted to show you an example of that. I have let me see if I have another one here.
And
Right.
so, and you're using Google Earth, which I think is, I know you can buy a license for it.
Correct.
I think it's pro, but I think all the stuff that you are doing is completely free. I have the pro version, so I'm not sure what is and is not
Right. This is the free
free.
version.
Okay, so y'all can go in, and it takes a little bit of learning. YouTube will be your best friend, but you know, you can go in and mark out your different pastures so you can get a really good idea of what you have, you know, kind of make a plan.
Yeah,
Because we all love free
I
things
agree.
in this world.
And I'm trying to figure out, this is not working for me. I'm trying to figure out where my other ones are. I don't know if I have to. Doesn't, oh, maybe if I do this. That's.
I'll be honest, I have never seen that before, but it looks really cool, and now I want
Oh,
to go play with it.
You've never used Google Earth?
I mean, not
Oh.
like that, no.
Oh, yeah, it's really cool. I've used it in some of my classes in grad school where, yeah, you can go in and make fence lines and, you know, mark out where, you know, your waters or, you know,
So
different
so here I have
features.
all the properties titled here as I'm coming down.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So if I go here, this is another piece of property. This is 400 and something acres, but can you see that there's not a lot of improvements?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not a lot of improvements. And if you can see this, there's only one water source,
Oh, wow.
and it's a pond. There is no well water here. So there
Hmm.
is not a sufficient amount of water
Because that
flowing through this
pond
place.
could go dry,
This
since you
pond
said
can go
that,
dry
yeah.
and it's done, you know. Here you kind of see some improvements here, but that's it. All of this is brush. All of this is brush. So you can't really hold that many animals. Here I have 5 cows, 1 bull.
Mm.
And how many acres?
432. Because there is not the forage for them
Mhm.
Yeah.
to sustain their body.
Mhm.
You know, so these are just examples that I kind of wanted to put out there and show individuals that may be watching this, you know, God willing, so that they kind of get an idea of what different properties look like with improvements and without improvements. So if you're gonna buy a piece of land that doesn't have improvements, well, you can always get it done.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we encourage you to go to the USDA. We encourage ranchers and beginners to be conservative, to be stewards of the land, to make those management practices to better themselves. You know, this is a very, very rewarding, and I'm gonna be real blunt about it because it's not gonna make you rich, but it will help you pay some of the bills. It'll help you pay the taxes. It'll help you have a little bit of extra money for Christmas, Thanksgiving, little family vacation, you know, whatever it may be. But it is rewarding, you know, when you can actually go and see, hey, those are mine. You know, hey, let's go, babe, or hey, let's go, son, or you know, let's go look at my cows. Or
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I heard you're a new farmer, you're a new beginner rancher. I heard you had some good cattle. Can we go look at them? Hey, yeah, come on. You know, that's kind of where you want to be at, you know, that brings that sense of ownership, the sense of being appreciated for what you're doing, you know, as a cattleman and things like that. So that's kind of what I kind of look for, you know,
Okay.
when I
And I feel like with livestock in general, like you said, it's very rewarding. I feel like there are honestly, like you have bad days, like everyone has bad days, but I feel like overall, you have more good days than bad. Like if you had a rough day at work, go drive around and check on your cattle. Like you just get out and it is being out in nature, whether you're driving around in your truck or, you know, a UTV, or if you have a horse and you just hop on your, whatever, like it's never a bad way to end the day
it's not,
or
you know,
start the day ever.
it's not, it's beautiful, you know, especially in the evenings, you know, me personally, I mean, like you said, we all have good days and bad days. But if I have a bad day, you know, I have a portable barbecue pit and I take that sucker, put it in the back of my truck and my tailgate, and I'll go to the ranch and I'll take a ribeye steak or some beef skirt, some fajitas or chicken fajitas, whatever. And heck, man, I'll barbecue and I'll just chill out there. You know, hearing the coyotes howl at night, you
Yeah.
know, those type of things, you know, that's very peaceful. Kind of sets you back, humbles you a little bit and say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I had a bad day, but you know what? I'm here with my cows. I'm here at my ranch. I'm here at my property. You know, this is mine. It makes me feel good. You know, I'm gonna go back home, kind of reevaluate everything. I've already feel good. Okay, let's go on to the next day.
Mhm.
And always give thanks for what you have every day, because today we're here, tomorrow we're gone. So, you know, if you
100%.
think about the past, it's gonna bring you depression. Think about the future, it's gonna bring you anxiety. So live for today, live for the happiness of you, to have your cattle, to be a beginner farmer, rancher, and enjoy what God has given us to enjoy every single day.
100%. I think that is a great note to end this week on.
I love it.
Yep. It makes me want to go out and buy a bunch of land that I can't afford and put a
Yeah,
bunch
I
of
was gonna
livestock on it
say
that I can't afford.
I was gonna say most people that, you know, come to the hill country, and they're getting started in this, that's the whole point. So, that's a great reflection, and, you know, and maybe if you're watching, you're somebody who you're already to that point, and maybe it was just a good reminder to get back to, or to think back to, you know, why am I doing this? So,
Exactly.
100%. Well, thank you for joining us today.
thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
We greatly appreciate you joining us, sharing all of your wisdom. I know you have more that you could impart on us, but
Oh, yeah.
we will turn you loose. We will turn everyone else loose. We hope everyone has absolutely fantastic rest of their day, fantastic rest of your week, and we will see y'all down the road. So
Yes. Thank you so
bye,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.